Hey everyone, welcome back to Pixel Mix, the pick and mix gaming podcast. As always, I'm your host Andy Wood, and I'm joined by my co-host Josh.
Hello, hello.
So this week, it's our first Games of the Month special, and we're going to be covering all the big games from June 2021. So we've got Ratchet Clank Rift Apart, we've got Fantasy VII Intergrade, and a bit of talk about the PS5 version of the main game. And we got Mario Golf Super Rush. So lots of good games to get to this week.
Plenty of good stuff, but how have you been doing? What's your week been like?
Well, my week's been sports, Josh. My week has been sports. There's too much sports. Watching all the Euros. Obviously, that's going quite well over here in England at the moment. And then now Wimbledon started as well, so I'm trying to watch a bit of tennis on the side. We've got like Olympics in a few weeks. It's just trying to do all the games. Playing all this good stuff, and there is a lot of good games coming out at the moment. I'm quite happy with that. But just fitting them in around endless sports at the moment.
How much of your shit did you lose when that second England goal went in against the Germans? Oh man. What a moment.
Yeah, I had to like go upstairs and apologize to my dog because she ran off as if like something bad had happened because I just screamed like mad and she was like, "What is this?" and just like sprinted upstairs. Like, it's all good. It's good things. It's fine. But oh man, yeah, good times. I feel like I don't want to like date us here because we'll probably end up talking at all about England doing well, and then by the time people listen to this, we'll be like out of the competition to Ukraine. But it's going well. I'm definitely happy with how it's going so far.
Totally going to get Shevchenko'd. Well, in between all the sport I've been watching as well, I did manage to find time to commit yet further to our Sonic the Hedgehog Beat the Sheet special. As any listeners from last week will know, I've already managed to collar Andrew down to getting some handheld titles in, and I've doubled down on that by picking up a Neo Geo Pocket Color with a copy of Sonic the Hedgehog for it, so we can have a very definitive ranking of the Sonic games. I picked up Sonic Riders for the PS2 today for £2. We're really getting some proper in-depth Sonic good stuff here. We're looking at 70 entries. It's going to be incredible. It's going to be the Sonic Apologist Society's finest moments, and Andrew's going to hate every damn minute of it.
I mean, ridiculously, that's going to be our second rankings episode on Pixel Mix. We still have to rank every Nintendo franchise before we even get to that. So we got a lot of mad stuff coming up in terms of ranking episodes. But I mean, my favorite thing about you buying that Neo Geo Pocket is just the most us conversation ever is when you send me a message saying, "Do you need a copy of Sonic the Hedgehog on Neo Geo Pocket? Because I've accidentally bought two." You just got too excited on eBay, bought a single copy, and then bought a console that came with the game. It's gone too far, Josh. And I will not be getting a Neo Geo Pocket. I might just have to play little bursts of those games on yours when I come and see you. I think it's the only way.
I'm very disappointed in you because there is one literally finishing tomorrow for £60. So listeners can look forward to next week where Andrew shamefully admits he's just bought a Neo Geo Pocket.
It's almost certainly happening. But anyway, let's get on with the news before we go to the Games of the Month special. Okay, so a few big stories this week, has to be said. And let's open this up with PlayStation, who announced a big acquisition and also totally leaked a second big acquisition that they didn't mean to leak. So first one on this is, I mean, PlayStation, I think, tend to make pretty obvious acquisitions, and these two follow suit. So first of all, you've got Housemarque, who are the developers who just released the, fairly well-received Returnal on PS5. Heard a lot of good things about that game, but I can't pay £70 for a roguelike, so I've not bought it. But yeah, Housemarque have joined the PlayStation family. And then as well as that, PlayStation Japan accidentally put the image out with Bluepoint logo instead. The guys who do, a lot of beautiful remakes. The latest one was Demon's Souls. And people were thinking at first, maybe they just put the wrong logo. Maybe it's an innocent mistake. But then they realized the background of the thing had like loads of different game images on it. And one of the images was Demon's Souls from the PS5. So like clearly they've intentionally made this image of Bluepoint also joining PlayStation. So I expect that announcement too pretty soon. But yeah, two good additions for Sony, but two fairly sensible ones. You'd have to say, no surprises here.
I actually thought they owned them both already, to be honest with you. So that was the news story for me this week, is that they didn't actually own them. They were just working with them as second parties almost. So it's cool that they've joined the PlayStation family, to use that god-awful term or phrase. I think, Returnal is obviously not going to be my bag because it's a giant roguelike, but I do love what Housemarque does. I particularly want to see like a sequel to Super Stardust Delta, which was so good on the PlayStation Vita, and even maybe Next Machina, which came out in the last console generation as well. Get them back to twin stick shooters. I know that's, you don't spend millions upon millions of pounds to have them make indie twin stick shooters, but at the same time, I'd be kind of happy if they did. So that's just what I want. And Bluepoint, those guys make some of the best remasters and remakes in the business.
Yeah.
So, by all means, that's a pretty cool acquisition too. Maybe that rumored Metal Gear Solid remake could be getting one step closer to being announced.
Yeah, I'd have a lot of time for that. I think there's some other games being batted around, like maybe Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, very, very old series, which hasn't had a new entry in a long time. So maybe something like that. But yeah, as you said, good acquisitions. I think for Housemarque, it's just good that they have a bit of security now, because it's like you said, they've released a lot of great little games over the years, but never really got much of a following. They've always been respected in terms of how good the games are, but they just never seem to really get the kind of sales numbers to back that up. Almost like an Arcane from the Bethesda and Xbox side, really, So yeah, just good to see they'll be kind of protected now. They should have a good bit of budget to make more cool stuff. So yeah, no complaints there. But moving on to some serious complaints, our next story this week is this news that EA have signed a deal with a company called PlayerWON, and that is player and then WON. So an awful name. And this is basically a deal to bring television-style adverts to console games. The plan with this is, and apparently they've already been trialing it in Smite for a while now, the plan is that they will give you an option on different screens, whether it's a pause menu or a loading screen or wherever. They'll give you an option to watch a 30-second advert or a minute advert or whatever, and then they'll reward you with in-game items. So basically like a free-to-play mobile game, except for it might be in games you've paid full price for. So that's nice. It's I feel like it's been a while since EA have done something that's really EA-ish. So this is a nice bit of return to form for them in just being a truly awful games company.
Well, it's nice to know that you can't teach a dog new tricks, and that it has had to revert back to form, because this is about as dodgy a business practice as EA has come up with since it, basically popularized loot boxes.
Yeah.
So, and that's really saying something. How far this will go, I don't know. Maybe they're just testing the waters, see how it works in some of the more free-to-play stuff. But if this does eventually make the crossover to actual paid releases, then that's just absolutely disgraceful practice on behalf of EA. I mean, we're old and we're miserable. So we remember the days where getting cosmetic items and getting stuff in games for, playing the game was just what happened. It was just a reward for playing the game. And those days are long gone. But to have them now be hidden behind adverts for shit products sold by shit marketeers is probably the worst case scenario for this entire medium. And it's bad enough as it is. Let's not. We're already getting blatant advertising just laundered all over the products. Let's not make it bloody worse.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, apparently they've been trying to, like, this PlayerWON company has been trying to kind of justify this by saying that, like, the generations coming through now, they don't watch standard television. They've kind of like cut the cord with like cable services. So they just need a way to advertise to them, Josh, as if these people also don't spend their entire days on the internet where adverts are everywhere. Like, I don't think you need to put the adverts in the games they've paid money for. I don't think that's where they need to go. But yeah, it's just going to be one of those things where the consumers are going to have to kind of, speak with the wallets a bit, really. I mean, there was a push actually just a week or two ago from Oculus and Facebook to basically inject kind of billboard ads into like VR games that people had already bought. So like they bought them with no ads, and then all of a sudden they were going to have ads. And there was a big enough pushback to that a couple of the development studios that were going to be taking part in this trial for it just said, yeah, not for us. We're getting out of this. Like they were getting review bombed, and people were, obviously talking a lot of smack about the games and stuff, and they backed away. So I don't know, maybe we'll see that happen here. I think at some point they're going to try and put this in a full priced game, and it's just up to the consumers really to say, nah, like we're not having that. But we'll see.
We'll see what happens. I can't say I have much hope, but you never know. You never know.
Exactly. So yeah, one final news story then before we head on to the Games of the Month special. And this is just really, I want to give some thoughts on a game I've been playing this week. A game called new football game that I found on the Xbox store. So this is just classic Konami, Josh. Here we go. So Konami are currently testing the online infrastructure for a new Pro Evo game. But to do that, most companies would say we're doing a Pro Evo soccer test and you can download it and play it. Yeah, what Konami have done is told no one about it. And then the Xbox store just has this listing for a caps lock new football game, which just has a luminous green background, like the brightest green you can pick, with like a single white line through it. Just says new football game, online test, all in capital letters. And then you download this, and it is in fact an online test for a new Pro Evo game. But also what it is awful. It's pretty much the worst game of football I've played in about a decade. And I don't know if this is the final game or if they're literally just testing the online infrastructure. But they've moved engines. They've been making this thing in the Fox engine from Metal Gear for the longest time, and now it's in Unreal Engine apparently. And just basic stuff doesn't work. Like, I'm just trying to string together normal, like, standard passes on the floor, and it just doesn't work. Like, it's absolutely awful. It's it's everything I'd expect from new football game. But if anyone wants to check out a new football game, apparently the test is going on until the 8th of July, I think. So give that a download, or even just go to the store page, because it is really, really funny seeing it around all of these kind of professionally put together store listings, especially when this comes from Konami, like an actual company. It's something else.
I mean, to call Konami an actual company is starting to become a stretch at this point. But, they're essentially a casino parlor given form. But nonetheless, here they are with yet another ridiculous, sodded PR disaster. I mean, didn't they announce today that they'd signed up with Bloober Team? They were going to make games together. They're going to share licenses, and there's literally only one license that Konami has, which the survival horror masters at Bloober Team would probably be interested in. So, the potential for a Silent Hill game is announced, but for now, we're just going to have to deal with a bit of new football game as Konami's big release of the year.
I mean, I would say, to anyone holding out hope for Silent Hill, just, keep an eye on the Xbox store in the next 6 months. And if you see a listing for new survival horror game, just give it a download, and that might be what you're looking for. Right. Anyway, let's move away from the news then and get on with this week's Games of the Month special.
Let's roll into Games of the Month then, and headlining our selection this week is Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, which was released on the PlayStation 5 this past month. So, Andy, you've spent the most time with this. I haven't actually finished this one yet because I got too hooked up on golf. So why don't you tell me a little bit about Ratchet & Clank?
Yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. So, I mean, I've been quite a big fan of this series for a while. I kind of came to the older ones a bit late because I didn't have a PS2, so I played the kind of HD remakes, big fan of those. Played the PS4 kind of reboot, that was great as well. And this is very much more of the same, it's more Ratchet and Clank. If you've played any of these games, they're basically, linear platformer games that are in a kind of, you go to different areas that are semi-open world, but they're not massive. You progress through those, you shoot a bunch of people and robots with like wacky guns, and you just have a really chill time. For a game that does technically have quite a lot of violence in it, because you are shooting people with rockets and machine guns and all kinds of goofy weaponry, there's just something very relaxing about kind of going through a Ratchet and Clank game, doing the story, but then also just like going back into the levels and just combing the map for all the secrets and finding all these kind of gold bolts that unlock, hidden extras and Easter eggs and things like that. And as I said, this is just more of the same, man. This is just a really nice, breezy playthrough. I completed this in pretty much 2 days and had a lovely time doing it.
Yeah, I pretty much echo the thoughts from the couple of hours that I put into this. It's very much in the Ratchet and Clank wheelhouse. It's not deviating too far from it. Let's be honest, as a game, it's just doing more of the same. What's exciting here is the technical showcase for what the PlayStation 5 can do, because we've been crying out for actual next-gen games for the best part of 8 months since these consoles launched now, and they've been pretty much few and far between. And I think we finally got something here which you can really point to and go, okay, this is what these consoles can actually start to achieve, because the loading times and the way that they're used to create gameplay experiences in this game is very, very clever and very, very cool. The way that you jump through portals and rifts to instantaneously move yourself around the map and switch to different areas. And it's just very impressive stuff. I saw it in trailers and I thought that looks pretty smooth, but nothing can quite prepare you for just how smooth it is in actual motion. And when you're playing it, it's very satisfying to do.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I think just as you said as well, the loading times in general, even if you're not talking rifts, are crazy in this game. I mean, I've had times where I've had this game, completely powered off, not on at all. And then you're going from the start menu to playing the game within about 2 seconds. It's lightning fast, and you can tell this is something that was made specifically for the PS5. It's not kind of carrying a PS4 version behind it trying to make that work as well. It is only playable on this console, and yeah, I think it shows that off really well. As you said, the rifts, they definitely show really impressive load times. There'll be times where you'll go from one planet to another planet, and the other planet you load into is a totally different level from another part of the game. Like, you will go there later on and see it, and it is a real full level, and you've just loaded into it within a couple of seconds while a quick animation of you going into the rift portal works. That's incredibly impressive. I do think, and I mean, I'm not sure quite how much of this you've played. I would say the rifts, even though they clearly show off that they can be very impressive, their usage and as like a gameplay hook is actually quite limited in the game. I was maybe a little bit disappointed that you didn't do more kind of wacky jumping through a rift and ended up on another planet stuff. It very much sticks to that in a few kind of set pieces. It's not like a gameplay mechanic that you are free to use all the time. You kind of do a lot more short range rift stuff. You drag a rift that's like off in the corner of the area you're already in, and then you're suddenly at that spot. So more of a teleport than anything. And that's cool too. But yeah, I maybe was a little bit disappointed that you didn't have more freedom over using those kind of level to level rifts where you're just somewhere else. I thought that would have been really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it could go further, and I dare say as the console and we tap into the power of them more, maybe that's something for down the line. But it's fun. It plays snappily. It's the same old Ratchet and Clank shooting, which has always felt pretty fun, pretty satisfying. The weapon choice is fantastic as ever. These guys really do put some wonderful weapons into these games, and the fun to, really discover, pick up, and start shooting about. I mean, you played further into this than I have. At the moment, my weapons are they're fun, they're eclectic, but there's nothing too wacky. How zany do they get the further on you go?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there's some pretty wacky stuff in here. There's a lot of weapons as well. I think you come out at about, trying to visualize the menus in my head. I think there's about 24, 25 weapons in this game, which is, a pretty decent amount. I'm sure. I feel like the old games didn't have this many. So that's definitely quite cool. They kind of vary from stuff that's fairly standard. You'll get like a Ratchet and Clank representation of a shotgun quite early on, or a grenade. Those, they have their own different hooks to them. The shotgun's actually quite satisfying because it uses the dual sense triggers. So you kind of, a half press does one shot, or if you all go all the way down, you kind of get a bit of pressure on it, but you do like a double shot. That feels pretty cool. But then, you go from there to stuff that, as you get through, there's weapons that are all effective, but maybe there's a few more kind of funny joke ones in there that, I wouldn't want to spoil too many of them on the show really, but there's definitely some more crazy stuff as you go on. And there's definitely also there's a weapon you unlock at the very end by getting all the collectibles and stuff that has some very fun stuff in it as well. There's definitely worth getting all the stuff to check that one out.
Well, it's another game by Insomniac where collecting everything and actually going around the map and doing everything within it is very attainable, very easy to do. They did a fantastic job with this in the Spider-Man series, both in the original game and Miles Morales, just exploring those worlds, getting all the collectibles. I often find that quite dull, but I don't seem to in their games. They make it so easy and so comfortable to snap to different parts of the world. They're not obfuscating it too much. They've got markers showing you where everything is pretty much. So you can just go about at your own pace and do it. So it's another almost certain platinum trophy for me when it comes to actually finishing off and doing everything there. And that's pretty impressive. I like the fact Insomniac wants you to explore everything in its game, and it doesn't make it too much of a chore to actually do that. It makes a pleasant change for developers who are quite happy to do so.
Yeah, no, man, I agree completely. I mean, I'm not a trophy hunter at all on the PlayStation side. Like for a bit of context, I definitely started off in the Xbox achievements ecosystem. Like I've got about 350,000 gamer score over there, but I'm just not a platinum hunter on PlayStation. I've always used it as like the exclusives box. So I jump in there, play the new big game, and then I kind of head back to the Xbox normally. So I only have I think four platinums right at the moment, and three of them are Insomniac. I've got Ratchet and Clank from the PS4, this Ratchet and Clank, and Marvel Spider-Man at the moment, and then I've also got Astro's Playroom, I should say, the PS5 pack-in title, and that kind of shares a lot of traits with these games in that they're just very easy and laid back to collect everything. Like Insomniac they're not trying to stress you out. They're not trying to make crazy hidden secrets that you're meant to just get. Like, it's not meant to be like miraculous that you stumble upon all these things. They want you to find all the secrets in their world. I mean, going through this game in particular, you're kind of you're going around the maps and they're all reasonably sized, and you kind of feel like you can find everything if you want to. The map even shows, like, it lights up when you've been somewhere as well, so you can see parts of the map you haven't been to, which definitely helps. But then even then, as you get further in the game, there's a side quest on one of the planets near the back end of the game that just straight up gives you effectively a treasure map. And then from that point, you can literally see the gold bolts and see these info bots that you have to find on the map then. So I like that. They do the same thing in Spider-Man. They have all these bags in the game that you can find for collectibles, and they just put them on the map. They're not trying to gatekeep that kind of, collectible nature. They're just saying, if you want to go and get them, just go and get them. And but while Ratchet and Clank, to be fair, nothing feels as satisfying to move around in as Spider-Man, I would still say, this game also does feel incredibly nice to just race around in. You can like get a lot of powers that make you quite fast. You kind of get hover boots that let you speed along. It just feels really smooth and really slick to get around. And again, yeah, that's why I think Insomniac games are always fun to just scrape all the content out of them you can.
We should probably talk about how good this game looks, because we haven't touched on it yet. I mean, a lot of people are saying this is almost like a live action, or not a live action, but like a Pixar movie which you can play, which is a bit of a stereotype of a saying, but I think it's pretty close to being true, because it truly is fantastic. I mean, they offer you 3 different modes to play the game in: a 30 frames per second, almost like glitz and glamour mode, where there's loads of stuff in the scene, in the background. It's densely packed, ray tracing maxed up, the fur on Ratchet being as tight as humanly possible, all that sort of stuff. And it looks fantastic in that. But then they've got the 2 other modes, which I think are more, for us at least. You've got the just bog standard 60 frames per second performance mode, which is locked down tight. It couldn't be smoother if it humanly possibly tried, but you do sacrifice that detail and you don't have ray tracing on. And then miraculously, they even have a 60 frames mode with ray tracing on, but it just drops the resolution a little bit. It's pretty imperceptible by most people's standards. You wouldn't really notice it. Takes away a few things from the background as well. And it looks fantastic in that mode. The ray tracing effects in this game are gorgeous. Just looking at Clank shining his way around is just an absolute delight. And that 60 frames is rock solid as well. It never drops.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, as you said, 3 modes, which is a good amount of flexibility. As far as I'm concerned, the 60 frames without ray tracing mode is unnecessary. I think they kind of were working on the 60 frames plus ray tracing mode up until quite close to release, and they got it ready in time for release. I think there might have been a world where that other 60 frames mode was almost like a fallback in case this had to come through in a later patch, because the 60 frames plus ray tracing mode is an absolute revelation. I can't believe they've managed to achieve it. This game shines with ray tracing. You get just so many beautiful reflections off everything, whether it's Clank or whether it's just all the shiny scenery in these kind of futuristic cities. Everything's got just perfect reflections coming off it, and you lose all of those if you go to the performance without ray tracing mode, and you don't want to do that. But yeah, the other 2 modes, man. I mean, the ultimate performance one, the 4K one, it looks beautiful. My only issue with that one is I think Ratchet is too smooth of a game to try and play at 30. I think it feels really off trying to play this one at 30 frames a second. And then you go to the 60 frames plus ray tracing mode, and you lose a tiny bit of detail maybe from the 4K one, but it's honestly not noticeable really. I jump between them for a while at the start of the game because I'm infuriatingly obsessive about this stuff. I need to feel like I'm on the setting I want to be on. So I'm flipping back and forth constantly trying to decide what's best. And in the end, I just thought I can barely see the difference between the 30 FPS one and the 60 FPS ray tracing one, and it just feels buttery smooth in that 60 frames. So yeah, I think that's the right choice. I definitely read the articles over at Digital Foundry on this one. They're kind of the gurus of like performance modes in games and figuring out how well everything's running. And their team unanimously said, yeah, 60 FPS plus ray tracing is the way to go in this game. So I just can't recommend any other mode. I think it's absolutely stunning what they've managed to achieve here. And I just hope we get more of this. I hope we get more games that can hit both of those things, give us those frames, but also get those reflections in.
Yeah, absolutely. I want you to quickly talk about the story. I've not played enough of it to really give a firm feel on it. I like the setup. I like what it's doing with it. And usually these games are very funny and surprisingly heartfelt. Does this continue that trend?
Yeah, I think it totally does, man. I think this is the best a Ratchet and Clank game has done in terms of story. They've always been games full of enjoyable characters and, kind of a generic quest to go and beat the bad guy who's, usually like Dr. Nefarious, you're going to go and beat him up and save the day. It's all pretty standard, but because Ratchet and Clank are so likable and some of the side characters are really likable as well, it kind of works anyway. I think this one, effectively does two things. It pretty much doubles the amount of really fun characters because, without it being too much of a spoiler, anyone who's seen any trailers knows you go into another dimension in this game. That's why it's called Rift Apart, and you meet another Lombax, and there's never been another one. There's always only been Ratchet, so now there's Rivet as well, and then Clank also has an alter ego as well. So you've got these kind of 4 leads instead of 2. And they're fantastic. I love the new 2 characters there. I think Rivet's fantastic. She's probably my favorite character of the 4 kind of leads in this game. And and also just having this new story where you're actually in an unfamiliar world to Ratchet and Clank, and it's like trying to figure out what's different in this universe, and it's kind of a grander plan of some evil guy trying to do some bad stuff. I just think it comes out really well. Like, I actually enjoyed the story beats in this one, whereas I can't really pull out any story beats from old Ratchet and Clank games other than other than the fact I like the characters. I can't tell you any real plot points. So I think they've done a great job there.
Fantastic. I mean, I can't score this game because I've not played enough of it. I can tell you that I think it's very good, and I'm very much looking forward to getting back to it. But you finished it. You've got the gosh damn platinum. So yeah, what would you give it out of 10?
Yeah, I mean, I did finish this. I absolutely love my time with it. I've come out of this one giving it an 8 out of 10. I think it's a great game. I don't give out 8 for nothing, and I just think it's great. I think the only reason I wouldn't give it higher is because it does stick to the Ratchet and Clank formula, to a fault almost. Like, I totally enjoy this gameplay, I really do, but other than the fact that you can jump through these rifts and have fast loading times, there's nothing in this game that you didn't do in the PS4 Ratchet and Clank, really. So for that reason, it's not kind of exceeding past an 8 out of 10 for me, but still, I think it's great. I think everyone who has a PS5 should absolutely be picking this up. It's just a great time, really fun kind of 10 hours to play over maybe a few days.
Fantastic. Let's move on to our next game, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Intergrade, as well as episode Intermission starring Yuffie. I will go into that later, but for now, you've been playing the base game for the first time in a long time on the PlayStation 5, soaking in all that detail. How are you finding it? I'll give a brief thought on how the patch does to the main experience as well, because I played it on the PS4 on launch.
Yeah, that sounds good, man. Yeah, so this was my first time picking this game up. I bought this game about 7 months ago, but back then we were trying to beat all the Game Pass for a different podcast, so I couldn't possibly find the time to play Final Fantasy VII Remake. It just wasn't going to happen. So very excited to put this in my PS5 over the last week and get straight on this PS5 version. I've not played the PS4 one at all. And I would say, I mean, this game looks absolutely stunning. I'm playing the 60 frames a second mode, the kind of graphical mode in this one. They say it's hitting 30 frames a second, but it looks real choppy. I would not recommend anyone goes near that mode, but playing this at 60, man, it's so smooth. The detail on the characters is amazing. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. And to go a little bit into the game from my side, I'll obviously go to you for most of it because I've only played the first 4 hours. But points from the first 4 hours, I would say, is the combat is already one of my favorite JRPG combat systems. It's, it's not going to be for the purists. This is an action game. There's settings to make it play like the original game. I've not dabbled with those, but the core gameplay, this is like an action RPG game. You can switch between the characters really fast and throw out combos and kind of do spells when you build up your ATB meter and stuff. It's dynamic, it's quick, it's really fun to play. Also, the music is just breathtaking. I mean, Final Fantasy VII the original game on PS1, the soundtrack on that was already great. So getting a big orchestra behind that to do like reimagined music is just brilliant. I'm absolutely loving that. And I mean, I'm just excited to play more of this, man. I've got to say, the first 4 hours have really, really gripped me. I'm really happy with it, and I think as well, like, because we only played Final Fantasy VII over the last sort of year or 2 years or whatever for us. We didn't play it at the time it came out, and playing this game even for 4 hours, I already feel like I know so much more about like Midgar and the city and the slums where these characters are currently kind of based at the start of the game. Like, there's so much more life you can see in this game as opposed to obviously a PlayStation 1 RPG with like really muddy backgrounds. And I just think they've done a brilliant job of bringing all that to life. It feels like a lived in town with a lot going on. You walk past people and there's just discussions on every corner by different people about kind of the big events that are happening in the story. And yeah, just a really, really lively, beautiful game. And I just can't wait to play more of it.
Yeah, Final Fantasy VII Remake is a fantastic title. I loved it on the PlayStation 4. I played the opening a couple of hours on the PS5 patch, and I had to stop myself from just playing the whole damn thing again because it just is that good. The combat system in this game is just gorgeous. It's a delight to play through. It's so snappy. It's so fluid. The switching between characters it just feels so intuitive. It's perfectly built together. The way that they work in the ATB bar is fantastic as well. I'd say that everybody is forced to play this game on normal difficulty to start with, but on hard mode, it's even better still because you can't use items in that mode. You have to rely on the ATB bar to heal your squad and heal your team. So it adds that extra layer of tactician and tactics that maybe is stripped away. That makes it more of an RPG, which just happens to have an action combat system than it did before. I mean, that's fantastic. That might be the best way to play it, even if it is obviously a harder way through the game. But just from the story beats and the way that they expanded this game, people have criticisms and problems with the fact it's padded out at times. I suppose it is, but I mean, for me, I was just enjoying hanging out with my buddies. Like, this game could have gone on for 80 or 90 hours and I'd have been absolutely delighted. I was just hanging out, doing some great combat, doing some fun things and just having a good time while the music was blasting in the background. I had no problems with this game being artificially longer because great. I'm absolutely thrilled it's artificially longer. Would it be a tighter, more cohesive experience if you chopped 10 hours off it? Yeah, it probably would. But at the same time, its audience probably kind of wants this extra stuff. They want to hang out with it. They're not going to want to rush on to the next game. Well, I wanted to hang around in this universe.
Yeah, well, that's it, right? I think there's a really difficult tightrope to walk with Final Fantasy VII Remake, because I know there's a faction of people who are disappointed that this was, this is literally only the first. I mean, it's only Midgar, which now that I've played Final Fantasy VII original, I can see that that's literally about the first 10% of the game. It's very small amount of the actual full RPG, and I can see why some people would be annoyed by that. But at the same time, it gives them the opportunity to just put so much more depth into this world. Like even the 4 hours I've played, I wouldn't have wanted this to be 3 hours of Midgar at the start of the game where I'm out of there and it's all gone before I even get a chance to like really breathe it in and kind of live it. So I think it's going to be, it's tricky, and I guess we'll see what they do with the rest of it. At this point, I honestly have no idea how many parts this runs for, if they even finish it. I at this pace, you're looking at about 10 parts, so they do need to speed up at some point. But I think it's great. I think people have revered this game for so long. Why not take your time? Why not spend as much time as possible in these kind of famous but never really explored areas and towns that everyone remembers from the original game, but you can't actually visualize much of that because it was so old, frankly. So yeah, I'm certainly happy with it so far. I'll see if I kind of feel it dragging later on. I'm sure I will at some point, but nonetheless, I think they've done a great job with this.
Yeah, absolutely. The side quest design is perhaps a little bit by the numbers as well. But again, it's just a means to have you hanging out with these characters more, and that's absolutely fine by me. The work they do on expanding the actual core team of Avalanche is fantastic. You know, in the original game, Jesse and Wedge and, you know, all of them, they were just there for all of a line. They didn't really any characters, but now they're fleshed out and they have actual personality and you care about them. And you actually understand the motives of this group more than you actually did in the first game. I mean, you know, it didn't need a lot of explaining. They're trying to save the planet from itself. But, you know, at the same time, it's kind of nice that there is more to it now. There's more depth to these people from where they are. It's just a fantastic game. I absolutely love it. The PS5 patch sorts out some of the texture issues. There's still a little ropey in parts. They were a lot ropier on the PS4, so it's definitely good for that. It looks gorgeous. It looks absolutely fantastic now, but it always looked kind of fantastic anyway, so it's only adding a bit of a visual sheen to what was already a great experience. And the 60 frames is just a delight because this combat deserves 60 frames per second, so it's even better for that. So this is now the definitive way to play this game. If you haven't played Final Fantasy VII Remake, make sure you're playing the PS5 patch of it. But yeah, I just absolutely adore this game. I really do. It was my favorite game of last year. And, you know, if I was to sit down and play it again, it'd probably be my favorite game of this bloody year. So it's best that I only had to play the intermission episode. Otherwise, I'd be going mad.
That's fair. So obviously you've spent a good bit of time then on both versions. Now you've played a good bit of the PS4. Well, you completed the PS4 one. You now spent quite a bit of time in the PS5 one. I guess a kind of question I'd have for you for that maybe a lot of people could do with an answer for is, obviously, they gave the game out in PS Plus, but that version isn't eligible for the upgrade. So even if you have a PS5, if you only own this game through PS Plus, you actually can't get the PS5 version. You have to own the game properly in some way. Would you say, would it almost be I don't want to say a waste. A waste is too strong of a word, but would you strongly recommend people just put the money down and purchase this if they have a PS5 rather than play that PS4 version on a PS5 if they've only got the PS Plus one?
If you've only got the PS Plus one, I don't think you absolutely have to pay for it unless you want to pay for it. I don't think it's an essential purchase, probably not the price it is at the moment. I mean, you can pick up a copy of Final Fantasy VII on the PS4 for all of £20 and then it's a free upgrade.
Yeah.
Of course, the PS5 version is coming in at £40, £50 in most places. Does include the DLC, though, which is £15 in its own right. So, you know, that's a decision to be made. I don't know why you wouldn't want to own this game outright because, you know, if you're enjoying it enough, why wouldn't you want to own this game? It's a fantastic experience. I'd also say if you don't own it and you were thinking is the upgrade, it's 20 quid less to, you know, buy a PS4 version instead of the PS5 version. The upgrade process is a bit of a faff for this game. It's a faff for all games, it seems. That everybody's upgrades are a bit cumbersome, but you know, this is a big game. This is an 80 gig download to get the PS5 patch. And you've got to install 40 gig of PS4 version just to get the bloody thing to boot up. So it's a sink of data right here. You're looking at like 120 gigabytes all told, you know, just sat on your hard drive. Maybe it's just bloody better just to buy the sodding PS5 version so you don't need to download the PS5 copy every single time you want to jump into it. But again, that's a cost consideration and people's own decision to make.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I mean, obviously, it really depends on your kind of internet speeds. I think listeners to Pixel Mix will quickly learn that you have notoriously bad internet despite living in London. So it does tend to affect your decisions more than mine, at least. But nonetheless, that's still irritating, you know. And I do hope PlayStation gets a bit better at this kind of upgrade process at some point, or even more so than that. I just hope that we get to a point where actual PS5 games come out and we don't need upgrade processes. That would be quite nice as well, because it's definitely an area where Xbox has kind of shown them up a bit, I think. But nonetheless, yeah, I mean, as I said, Final Fantasy VII, fantastic game. And whether you've got the PS4 version or the PS5 one, you've obviously got a great time on your hands here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll quickly dive into Intermission, the Yuffie episode, which they just added. It's actually more substantial than I expected it to be. You're looking at about 6 hours worth of content here.
Okay.
And it's basically a lot more of the same. You only have two characters this time. You can't switch between them. You only control Yuffie, whereas the new character, Sunon, is essentially controlled by you. You can offer him commands and, you know, issue commands, but the chances are you're not going to. You just let him do his thing. He's going to be fine. He's a perfectly competent AI partner. So on the whole, you're just playing as Yuffie. She has a very different style to the actual characters in the main game. She's very fun to control. She has a lot more ranged attacks to her arsenal. She uses a massive boomerang sword essentially to deal damage from afar and throw magic spells at them. And you can come in close if you want to. And you can also use a thing called a synergize with Sonon, where you can just pound down on them, and it's almost comically fast by the time they get up. They really play into the ninja kind of side of Yuffie and her Wu Tai, backing. So she's a very fun character to control. So that's the main thing. The game looks gorgeous. It looks absolutely fantastic. It was built for just the PS5. I'm not entirely certain why. I honestly can't tell why this isn't available on the PS4. This just blows my mind, but it isn't for whatever reason it is. And it is only PS5, which is a shame, I suppose, for people who want to pick this up. But it does play well. The music's really fun. The story's quite good. Yuffie is a fun character to play because, of course, we didn't see much from her in the original game. She was a side character. She wasn't really an essential pickup for the team. So a lot of her main story was in Wu Tai and the odd line here or there, throughout the main game. She's fleshed out a lot more here as, this young, ninja master who's like 17, 18 years old, but is clearly the best of her class and is sent to steal a piece of giant materia from the Shinra headquarters in Midgar around halfway through the events of Final Fantasy VII Remake. And you just follow her grow up as she sees shit and realizes that it's not just about her. It's about, this greater fight, this greater struggle. And she's just very well written. She's very enjoyable to play. She's got a charming disposition. Sonon, who is the character you play alongside, is actually quite fun too. He's got like a Cloud gruffness to him, but a bit more mellow, a bit more chilled out. He's a bit more like a dad who's just like, oh God, what's she doing now? Rather than, angry about life like Cloud is. So he's a fun person to play along with. It's a very well-told tale. It justifies its £15 for me because I just needed more Final Fantasy VII Remake. They could have charged me £40 for this. I would have probably paid it.
Yeah, that's fair. So I guess, from my side, obviously, I'm long away from playing this. I will definitely play it when I finish the main game. But I guess the kind of questions I'd have really is, obviously, as you said, Yuffie is a side character in the original game. You don't necessarily have to get her, but most players you stumble upon her eventually, and she has kind of her own side story stuff, but it doesn't maybe affect the main game. Now, where does this game stand in terms of like, does it feel like this will be essential going into the kind of part 2 release of the main game? Does it feel like Yuffie's kind of developing a character a lot in this game, and then when you meet her in part 2, she's going to be a bit more grounded and a bit more kind of ready to help the team? Because without going too much into the original PlayStation Final Fantasy VII, obviously when you meet her, she's quite immature and she's quite focused on this one goal, and she sort of learns to help the team as time goes on. It almost sounds a bit like that journey's happening in this DLC, really. So I wonder do you think it'll sort of play into that game directly?
I think there'll be a little bit of crossover to it. I dare say you could cover a lot of it just in the bloody cutscene, to be honest with you. It's not okay. Essential stuff, but I think that kind of journey isn't completely done. There's still that immaturity there. So I think we pretty much leave her in Intermission where we find her in FF7. It's just it kind of fills in some of the blanks and explains why she is like she is. And, ties her into the actual main story of this game. I'd say the bigger reason to play this game is because it has huge implications for the actual main game. I don't want to spoil it too much, but the Yuffie parts are fantastic. But there's a big load of stuff right at the end of this, which definitely ties into the next game. It's worth playing just for that. There's big story implications, which is in this DLC. So I think they're going to have to make it pretty important, pretty canon, because they've kind of set it up already.
All right, no, that's cool, man. That sounds good. That sounds exciting. Obviously, that's another reason. We were talking earlier on about, do you upgrade and buy a real version if you got the PS Plus one? I mean, if you want to play Intermission with Yuffie, you kind of have to right now, unless they do find a way to bring that to PS4. So yeah, no, sounds really good, man. I guess you've obviously long since finished Final Fantasy VII Remake, so I certainly can't give a score to it. I've only played a few hours. So where does this sit for you? I guess the main game and also the DLC.
So for the main game, I'd still probably score that a 9 out of 10. I don't think this patch, solves every single problem. There are still pacing issues in the main game, but I absolutely adored it, and I think it's a fantastic time. Intermission, I think we're looking at more of an 8 out of 10 for that. It's not essential stuff, it's fairly slight, but it's enough for fans. And if you enjoyed that main game, you're going to want to play this. Quick shout out as well to the Fort Condor minigame, which is included in this. Of course, okay. Fort Condor in the PS1 release was the real-time strategy battle scene where you'd have to place units and they'd march up and down. It's recreated here as a board game, which is absolutely fantastic and a lot of fun to play with a new orchestral version of the Fort Condor music. Nice. And it's just a simple tower defense game. That's all it is. But it's kind of deep. It's kind of got a lot of depth to it. And you can really customize and build out your loadout in this game. And by the time you switch to hard difficulty, people take no fucking prisoners. This game gets properly tough. So in many ways, just for Fort Condor alone, this is worth it.
Yeah, no, that sounds good, man. That sounds really good. And I guess one final tip I'd have to say here, because, you're telling me all this stuff about things in the DLC and other parts of FF7 Remake, and I'm getting real excited about it. I would say, again, I only played the original FF7 a few months ago, and even, it's an old game now, and I basically liked it so much and liked the characters in the world so much that I'm massively excited about this remake, even though I literally just played that one. So definitely also to everyone listening, do seek out that original game. It's well worth playing, as well as obviously this remake.
Yeah, there's definitely an argument to be made that it's probably better to play FF7 on the PS1 first before playing this game. I didn't, and it's not ruined it for me. But I think there's definitely an argument to be made that the story beats of the remake will hit you harder if you're familiar with where the story is going to be going.
Yeah.
Okay, final game of the month. We're going to hit the links with Mario Golf Super Rush, released on the Nintendo Switch this past month. Latest edition in Mario's long-running sports saga. He's probably been playing golf longer than any other sport, particularly if you take the NES game. He was in that bloody NES game, wasn't he? So
he was, yeah.
This is his oldest sport. How does he return to form on this one, or does he not?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Obviously, Mario's been doing a lot of sports games for a lot of time. I've enjoyed Mario sports titles since really the N64, when Mario Golf did start. Loved it on there. Obviously, there's tennis as well. And I mean, me and you both absolutely adore Mario Strikers, the football game. Desperately hoping for one of those again. But nonetheless, big fan of golf as well. So I was massively hyped for this game coming into it. And I think Mario Golf Super Rush is a tricky one because I think it's still a Mario Golf game. You still get, fun, arcadey golf gaming, which is nice. That's a nice. I do enjoy doing that. I find it quite cool to just play a casual round, go around these courses. Try and do as well as I can on it. So it's all nice. It is, but I also think that it kind of misses the mark on a lot of stuff that I think previous games in the series have done a better job of. And, you want to be seeing an upwards trajectory with these things. I don't want to be looking back to GameCube and Game Boy Advance even versions of a game and thinking those did stuff better than this brand new Switch release. So, yeah, I don't know. I kind of come out of this one thinking, perfectly fine. If you fancied Mario Golf before this week, if you were already excited for it, I would say still buy it. Don't kind of let any negative thoughts you hear, they're not so bad that it's you're not going to want to play it. But I do think just kind of temper your expectations and temper your hype a little bit, because this isn't the next it's not the next ultimate Mario sports game. It's definitely just a middle of the road entry.
Yeah, it's very much a solid continuation of a franchise I personally quite enjoy. I mean, Mario Golf still plays a damn good game of golf. That at its very core, the golf mechanics in this game are still fun to play. There's slight tweaks, which I don't care about. There's a power meter now where the very top of it will have your shot skew away for little to no reason other than to stop you trying to hit a bar at the very top, which is odd to me. That's kind of the best part of power bar mechanics, is that if you do smash it at the top, you've done it as well as you possibly can do. So that's a little odd. But, other than that, the golf remains fairly unchanged. You're still taking into account wind, spin, super shots, all the kind of things you've done in all Mario Golf games is still here, and it's pretty fun. It's not as tight as, say, in Everybody's Golf, which has always been a better golf series in my mind, but it carries that Mario charm, which Everybody's Golf just can't match, because you can't match the charm of the Mario game.
No, exactly. That's it. I mean, I think Mario Golf in its best era was the best arcade golf game, but I do agree. I think the more recent versions of Everybody's Golf are outshining this series now in everything except for Mario. So that's definitely true. Yeah, those shot mechanics are very strange. The old games, for anyone who hasn't played them, they used to have a system where you'd kind of tap a button, a power bar would start filling up, and then if you manage to tap the very end of that power bar, and then it comes back down and you've got to kind of tap right where it started from again, you do like a perfect shot. It would go as far as it could go. It would go straight. And that was a good system. Whereas this one has this random chance of failure system to it, where the closer to the very top you go, there's more chance that your shot will randomly skew off target. And I think that's kind of a bit of a killer. Like you learn to get used to it, you adapt to it. It kind of stopped annoying me after the first half an hour because I just accepted that was what the game was. But I don't think you want random chances of failure like that in this game. I think and the weird thing is as well, even when it goes wrong, it seems to barely go wrong in my experience. Like I'd have the cursor go off to the side and it play a little noise as if I'd kind of screwed the shot up, and then it pretty much go where I wanted it to anyway. It wouldn't go like drastically off course. It maybe just went slightly more to the side and it was fine. So that was a very strange choice to do that. But as you said, once you get used to that, this is still just decent arcade golf, really.
It's what happens in between the golf, which is the big change in this game and where the super rush comes from. So most of this game, you can play standard golf modes if you so wish to, but it really encourages you to play something they call speed golf, where in between shots, you are tasked with running to get to your ball, essentially. You have a sprint button with a stamina meter, and you can make your way there as quickly or slowly as you like. You have a special dash move as well, which you can use so many times, but it drains your stamina quicker. And it's all about managing that to make sure you get to the ball quickest so that you can play your next shot and you don't run out of time, because you've only got so much time to get the ball in the hole at the end of the game. All your time adds up, and you could lose a game if somebody actually has a better time than you at the end of it, even if you actually played a better round of golf. So, it's all about making sure you do things quickly. I don't mind it, but I also kind of don't see the point of it, which is a terrible indictment of the mode, really. It never bothered me. I found it perfectly serviceable, but I didn't really feel it added much, and I didn't find it hugely fun either. It was just a slight inconvenience. It was almost like it was hiding a loading screen to me. It's like instead of it loading to my next shot, I was just going to run there. And
Yeah, no, I get that, man. I mean, we'll go into the adventure mode in a bit, which is the big single player mode. But for now, I'll kind of just stick to speed golf. And I think that the issue with speed golf is that I can see a world where that might be very fun in local multiplayer. If you have some friends around and you're kind of all there, you're taking your shots, you're sprinting on the course, you're kind of actively trying to screw your friends over. Maybe you do your sort of super dash into them, which knocks them off course or like hits their ball out of the way somewhere. You've got that kind of jeopardy of everyone messing with each other a bit, and I think it has a good system of because it's all about doing the hole the quickest, but also your amount of shots do factor in. I think you get 30 seconds. You get 30 seconds added to your time for every shot you take. So you want to rush, but you don't want to rush to the point where you miss a shot, because then you've effectively wasted 30 seconds. I think that all adds up to make a fun multiplayer mode, which is great. What I think at the same time, though, is that it's just not fun in the slightest. It's actually incredibly boring to play that against computer opponents. I think there's nothing to it, because you don't have that push and pull of like trying to screw them over and they're trying to screw you over. You've just got AI opponents who are just doing the most simple version of, they're just going to run to their ball and hit it. There's no tactical elements around that. They're just going to do the hole and move on. And I don't get any enjoyment out of beating them. I don't get anything out of like attacking them to make them do worse. I found that all I did whenever I was playing this against the computer, which you do a lot of in the adventure mode, is I'd literally just be hitting my ball, running to it, using my dash whenever I had enough stamina, hitting my ball again and running straight to it. I wasn't doing anything different. And that gets incredibly boring after a while. I was very sick of running to my ball very early in this game, and I just didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, I guess kind of the problem with that as well is that it's not quite quick enough. If it was a little bit faster, it might feel a bit more fun, but it's somewhat sluggish. Yeah. And so there's not even like a thrill of the traversal to it. It's fairly simple. The courses don't have much in the way of obstacles, so you are literally just running across a flat surface most of the time to your ball. If you were jumping over things or things were coming towards you, maybe that would add like a bit like a platforming element to it, which would maybe make it a bit more exciting still, but you're not really. You kind of just run into the ball. So it's an odd choice. I mean, for something that is called speed golf, it slows the game down more than anything else. Like, it's taking you longer to get to your next shot. If you just play a standard game of golf, you can finish a round of 18 holes in about 15 minutes. If you play speed golf, you play about half an hour, which is a very odd way to go about it.
It's not speedy. That's it. And I think as well, like, obviously as you said, they've massively pushed speed golf as the way to play this game. It's the selling point. It's, even the trailers, they made that look quite dynamic and action packed when you're running around. And they clearly wanted to go for that as the best thing to do. And I even think when you're playing with more than one player, when you've actually got friends around, you're playing multiplayer, I still wouldn't go for speed golf. I'd go for a mode they spent a lot less time advertising, which is called battle golf. And battle golf, it's not much point playing it on your own, but basically what it does is it puts you in a kind of an arena full of like Mario hazards. Like there's bob-ombs, there's thwomps and womps and all these kind of things. They're all going to try and stop you getting the ball in. There'll be chain chomps chained up places, and if you run past them, they'll attack you. And basically there's a course with nine different holes on this big open area. And if anyone, it's the first player to get free balls in the hole wins. But if they get the ball in the hole, that hole disappears. So there's this great tactical game of like, do you follow the rest of the group, or do you just like shoot long in your first shot and try and sort of tackle the holes far away from everyone else so you can get your free first? That's actually a really cool multiplayer mode. I've not had the opportunity, sadly, to play it with any friends yet. I actually have just played it with the AI, but I can even tell already that's going to be the great fun way to play this with friends rather than speed golf, which frankly would just take a bit too long. As you said, like, I don't think people are picking up Mario Golf and being like, should we play this course for like about 40 minutes? I think you want that snappy battle golf kind of 2 to 3 minute battle mode. And that looks fun for what it's worth.
Yeah, I played a bit of that as well. I played a bit of that online, actually, and it is a good time. It's a fun mode to play against people. There's a bit more competitiveness, and all the actual intricacies of these systems kind of come out to the fore a little bit more, which is what the game was needing all the way through it, essentially. Yeah. So, yeah, I think as a multiplayer game, these modes work better, but for the single-player experience, it's definitely a lot more of a drag. I mean, we can talk about the single player now. This game does bring back the adventure mode, which people love so much from the GBA version of Mario Golf, for example. Yeah. And it does a fairly similar thing. You're building up your character, you're building up stats and experience, and you can increase your power, your spin, how straight you can hit a ball, and how quickly you can land the course, which is pretty important because you'll be doing a lot of that. And it's okay. It's perfectly serviceable. But I'd say the biggest problem is it's just a little bit one note. Yeah. I mean, you essentially just play a load of fairly dull golf games against people until it ends. And the main story of the thing doesn't even really kick in until about 75% of the way through the game, bafflingly.
Yeah. If not further on. I think that's the big problem with this, right? I think you go back to those modes people loved in the Game Boy Advance version, Game Boy Color version, where you're building up your character, you're doing golf tournaments, and that was kind of the main brunt of it, to be honest. You just had your own character and you went to the different places and played in tournaments and stuff. Whereas this one, it's really weird because you spend the first 80% of this entire story mode kind of not really being allowed to play tournaments. It feels like everywhere you go, they're kind of like, oh, you don't have permission, but you can play a freehold practice round. And then you do the freehold practice round. They're like, now you can do 9 holes against one other person. And it's just a bit like, I don't know, man. This sounds like it's really weird because it's entirely a superficial thing, but it completely changes how fun golf games are to play. But in a lot of the other Mario Golf games, you'd go into these places and you'd play an 18-hole golf tournament, and the gameplay would be the same as ever. You're there, you hit the ball, you get your score, and your score runs up through the holes. The only difference between that and this one is in those games, every time you finished a hole, there'd be a massive leaderboard, and you'd see that you're like 27th place and Chain Chomp's above you and Donkey Kong's above you. And, you need to try and make up some shots to catch up to them to kind of win the competition. And like, they'd always kind of skew it in your favor in those games. They'd always have a thing where like the AI people would kind of fall away near the end and you'd just win. But still, like, that satisfaction of finishing a hole and seeing like, oh, they're ahead of me, I need to catch up over the next few holes. That makes the game. That's what golf is. That's why golf's fun. And this game, they like, it feels like about 3/4 of the time you go out there, you're just sent on the course on your own, and some guy says to you, oh, make sure you finish in better than like 2 shots over par. And that's it. That's all you get. There's no drama to it. There's no kind of excitement. It's just for the whole thing, you just know not to suck too badly, and you'll always do way better than the targets as well. So just a complete lack of jeopardy, I think, really does kill it.
Yeah, I mean, they kick off with the tournament pretty much straight away in the
Yeah.
story mode, and that was fun. I was enjoying myself, and they just don't really do another one for
Yeah.
gosh darn ages. It just never turns up again. They kind of vary up the modes. They rely heavily on speed golf mainly throughout the entire game. They may have you measure your water supply in certain holes, but it's just more
It's just
speed golf
again.
it's the same thing, but
Yeah.
they've just changed the icon. That's literally it.
Yeah.
And they have a different mode, which is cross-country golf, which is kind of what battle golf is, but stripped of all the actual Mario funness. Instead, you just happen to play these holes in any order you like. But that particular mode actually has the potential to be fun, but it's too early in the game because you get a lob wedge later on, which would make a lot of that course a lot simpler and more enjoyable to play. Instead, you've got to smash it into tornadoes, which has a 50-50 chance of actually working. And then you just fucked. If it doesn't happen, then you really are in this shit. So, that mode had the potential to be quite fun, but just fell completely flat on its face because it hadn't actually powered you up enough to tackle it in a way which would be fun. So that was another strange misstep.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Totally agree with that. And I think another big issue as well, which, we've kind of said that the actual adventure mode kind of doesn't really come into its own till the very end. You suddenly end up on a quest at the end. And another thing that happens in this game is that the golf courses don't really come into their own until the very end either. I mean, there's only 6 courses in this game at launch, and they are going to be adding more for free as DLC. We've already seen a new Donk City course in the trailer, which is going to be added for free. That'll be great. Looking forward to it. But I would argue that out of these 6 courses, only the last one is Mario themed. You could maybe argue the one before starts to be a bit Mario, but the first 4 are just absolute, just plain as anything. There's like 2 courses that are just grass areas. The next one is kind of woodlands, but there's a bit of rain, but it's still just a normal place. The next one's like a desert, but there's still not that much Mario stuff going on. It's just very, very weird and disappointing. Because, I mean, I remember the older Mario Golf games where, even if you were on a course that was just green grass, the background would be full of like Mario hills with eyes on and warp pipes and all this kind of Mario fare. And that's not here. It's almost like we've just implanted Mario characters into a non-branded golf game at times. And I think that's such a weird, like, open goal that they've missed there. I find that very odd.
Yeah, the course design isn't fantastic, and there's definitely not enough of them. I think that's the point. I know there'll be more coming with DLC, but I mean, just 6 at launch is quite stingy. I mean, the 3DS game had 10.
Yeah.
And, we've got 4 less than that on the bloody Switch. It's a very odd decision. As I say, the story of the mode doesn't get going until far too late into it. The side stuff you can do is just really tedious, like put-in challenges or drive-in challenges, just really dull stuff that repeats endlessly all the way through. It's perfectly playable because, again, the core golf is fine in this game. It's not a bad experience. It just never quite gets going. And just as a side note, the noise your Mii makes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was my next point.
Absolutely appalling. The noise all the characters make, to be honest with you, because they all just repeat the same noise for every new line of dialogue.
But the Mii's. I mean, oh my God. I mean, I think I tweeted about this and I said, like, who injected all of the Mii's with helium constantly? Like, I can't look at Mii's the same again now. Like, I kind of have this quite gruff Mii that looks really angry. And then he just has this ridiculous high-pitched squeal of a voice and then he says the same line every time I do a super dash. But if I don't do the super dash, speed golf becomes even slower than it already is. So I have to do it. And that's the most intense push and pull of the whole game. It's like, do I make speed golf take another few minutes or do I do the stupid noise again? It's who knows which option is better. It's awful.
Yeah, it's not good stuff, let's be honest. But, that's kind of everything I have to say about this game. I don't think it's terrible. The presentation is nice enough. It looks okay for what it is. But it never quite gets going for me as an experience. It's serviceable, but even just on the Switch, there's better golf games than this. You've got Golf Story. You've got What the Golf. Both are much more enjoyable golf games than Mario Golf Super Rush. I think there's just an element of missed potential here. And maybe that'll come out with the DLC courses. Maybe they'll have a bit more personality to them. New Donk City looks like a lot of fun. That's the kind of thing I want more from this series. But as a core golf experience, it just about holds its own. But it's not a fantastic Mario Golf game. I'd probably be saying this is a fairly generous 6 out of 10, but you could give this a 5, to be fair.
Yeah, I think that's fair, man. I mean, I have to touch on one last point on this as well, because I think it's my actual, the thing I dislike about this the most, and it's the reason why I think I'm already done with it. Whereas, like, I played the 3DS one, the N64, GameCube ones for forever. I'd go back to them all the time and just chip away at a bit more content in them. And I think the thing that really, really kills me in this game is the fact that there's absolutely nothing to unlock. There's just you're not driving towards anything. Basically, there's 6 courses, and whether you choose to do it in adventure mode or in just a single round of the course, you unlock the next course by playing that one. So you can play 5 rounds of golf, 1 on each of the courses to unlock all 6. Then you've got all 6 at that point. All the characters are unlocked from the start, and there's just nothing to play for. Whereas you go to the N64 version, the first ever Mario Golf, and that had a situation where you had to like win a tournament to unlock the next course, which even that's better, because in this you just have to play 18 holes. You can make an absolute botch job of it and you still unlock the next course. So you had to win a tournament, but also it had a totally separate 1v1 mode where you had to unlock the characters one at a time. So it's like you'd start the game with maybe 2 characters like Mario and Luigi, and then in the 1v1 mode, it'd be like, right, next up is Yoshi. You've got to beat him to unlock him. Then it's Peach. Then it's Donkey Kong. And, they'd all have their own challenges on their own courses. Some would be 3 holes, some would be 9, some would be 18. And it's a reason to play. It's something to drive you onwards to keep playing this game. And I kind of finished adventure mode a couple of days ago. And then I played a couple of rounds of just normal golf on my own, because bafflingly, you can't even choose to do a tournament outside of that one time it appears in adventure mode. I can't even play a tournament against the AI on my own in any other mode. And I was just like, why would I keep playing now? I don't know. I've played the courses, I've played the adventure mode, everything's unlocked. And I don't know if, some people won't care. Some people won't need that. But I love that kind of carrot on a stick of just constantly having this next thing to unlock. So if you are a player who actually needs that to get a lot out of this game, then I would actually say don't get it, to be honest. But if you don't need that, if you just want an arcadey golf game, then I'd echo your sentiments, to be honest, Josh. I think there's kind of better options out there, but this is fine. And, it has the usual charming Mario bit of kind of, coat of paint to it. So yeah, it's okay. I mean, I'd give it a 6 out of 10 too, but it's only just scraping it, to be honest. All right, then. Well, that is the end of the Games of the Month special this week and the end of the show. So, if you want to join us next week, we will be doing our first episode of Mini Console Madness. Mini Console Madness is our episodes where we're going to be going through one game from the pile of mini consoles that we all bought and never played each week. And that game is picked at random. Even we don't know which game is going to be coming next until the end of the show, where we'll be doing a live randomizer to decide the next one. But next week we are playing Strider, the Sega Mega Drive / Sega Genesis game. So yeah, join us for that next week. But until then, if you want to catch us on social media, you can find us at PixelMixPod on Twitter. If you want to get in touch with any thoughts or any feedback on the show, you can find us at pixelmixpod@gmail.com. So until next time, I'm Andy Wood.
And I'm Josh Stevenson.
And we'll catch you next week.
Goodbye.